Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Geek and Dorks Reviews. We're back to documentaries this week, and I checked this one out. It is available for free on Hulu, and it is called Into the Abyss. And I believe this one was made in 2011. Well, it was made in 2011. It was actually released in January of 2012. And here is the plot line from IMDb. Conversations with death row inmate Michael Perry and those affected by his crime serve as an examination of why people and the state kill. Wow, seems pretty deep, huh? And honestly, when this movie started, I wasn't quite sure I was going to make it through it. Very early on, the director, who also kind of narrates this, he's basically conducting all these interviews himself. His name is Werner Herzog. He makes it very clear that he is against the death penalty. And as soon as I heard that message kind of come out, I was like, "Ooh, am I ready to take on, an hour and 45 minutes of this conversation and kind of reweighing all this?" And I had this little intuition in me that said, yes. I had this thing that just said, yes, John, this conversation is pretty important. And I know that people have very strong feelings one way or the other based on that. But if you guys know me and know how I like to look at things, I like to reinvestigate those old feelings and kind of crack them out every now and then and just kind of put them to the test and see if maybe I haven't changed my mind. And this film was a very good way of doing that. For a film that so strongly starts with this sense of, hey, this is about capital punishment, the actual narrative that goes on, it's very objective, and it's done in a really interesting way. He starts you by sitting you down with the inmate Michael Perry that is going to be dying within a matter of days. But then he goes to family members of the victims of this crime. And as you're watching it, he's also unfolding the story of what this crime is, how they conducted it, why they conducted it. So there is this natural mystery element that's going on while you're watching it, because you're just like, what happened? I don't understand what's happened here. And in doing all that, you're also getting to spend time with these family members of the victims. And of course, that's helping you to come to some understanding why some people would certainly support capital punishment in a case much like this. So it does a very interesting thing of seeing both sides of it. And in a really bizarre twist in this whole case, he wasn't the only person. He and a friend of his kind of went on this spree where some people unfortunately had their lives ended. And they were tried separately. And his friend only got life in prison, but Michael wound up, essentially getting capital punishment. So it's kind of weird just to see the justice system work in a strange way like that. Why does one guy get to live out his days in prison and, eventually marry someone that is kind of a fan of his in prison, even though she says she's not one of those girls that's a fan of guys in prison? Yeah, she is. It's really, really, it's a tough case to look at just because what they did was so wrong, and it really does land the question firmly in your lap of, is what we're going to do to make at least one of these guys pay for his crime the right thing or not? And one of the most compelling segments in it is they actually have an officer that, actually I think he was a captain if I remember correctly, that is the person to sit with them before they're taken into the lethal injection room. And the stuff that he talks about in terms of his experience of having that job and having to deal with that job over 100 executions that happen is really, really compelling stuff. And if that doesn't make you think one way or the other about it, you're probably pretty firmly rooted in your beliefs on it. I found myself being pushed to both extremes over and over in this film. There's times where you see Michael Perry and you're just like, what could this guy contribute to society? What good could this be? And then on the flip side of that coin, you're like, is this guy all there? Did he ever have a chance? Did anyone ever care enough to tell him about what right and wrong was? and how it was going to lead him to this path. Is he even all mentally there? It really, for me personally watching it, it pushed my feelings all over the place. So this film is currently rating a 7.3 out of 10 at IMDb. I have to agree with that. I'd probably say it was a 7.5. In terms of the structure of it, I think it was a little long. There seemed to be some musical interludes that were included, and he might have been clever for actually putting them in, because you're dealing with so much content that is provoking your mind that sometimes you just needed some time to process and think. So there are several pieces where you're literally just listening to music and watching some footage of a random thing like a freeway or the sky with birds flying and stuff, and you're kind of like, okay, what's next? I'm ready for whatever's next. But I think he did that on purpose to give you some breathing space, basically, for the topics and the information that was going to be coming your way. Still, even outside of that, felt a little long. I think he probably could have trimmed 15, 20 minutes out of this, and I don't think he would have lost a whole lot. But it was also interesting having his perspective. I believe he's German. It sounded like it by his accent. But having almost this perspective of someone that is not necessarily an American that's looking into this topic, and I believe this case happened in Texas, if I recall correctly. So it's very cool to see his line of questioning and how he's really not pushing an agenda with his questioning. He's really just trying to understand the motivations and thoughts and feelings that are going on around this whole case. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I think if you're a fan of unbiased information, which if you're watching this channel, I would like to hope that that's the kind of content I create, I think that you will enjoy the natural mystery of coming to understand what these crimes were, what happened to these crimes. There is nothing terribly graphic. I mean, you're going to see some real crime scene footage. You're going to see a little blood, but nothing terribly graphic in terms of, body parts or anything like that. So, but there is this little weight that you're going to have to decide if you want to take on or not about watching Into the Abyss, and that is to have someone ask that question of you again: do you really believe in capital punishment or not? And here is some compelling dialogue that's going to push your feelings all over the place about that. So, I don't know if everyone likes doing stuff like this to themselves like I do, but honestly, it's a really good piece of art, and I think you guys will enjoy it, especially if you like Brain Scratch. So that's why it's here on Geek and Dorks Reviews. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. I hope you're having an awesome day. I'll catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Take care.